Hello, the skill I'd like to show you now is pipe lace. So this is a good example of pipe lace, and you can see it's standing proud and the small pieces. So they look really lovely on wedding cakes, birthday cakes, anniversary cakes. They could match the pattern of a bridal dress, so that makes the cake a lot more personal. The patterns you can take from the internet, from material, from anything, surroundings you can make the patterns from. But you've got to make sure that they are secure, that when you pipe them, they won't break apart. So, what equipment do I need? I need piping bags. I'll just make myself a couple of piping bags. Now I'm using a small piping bag because the tube I'm going to use is a small tube. So I need a couple of those. So I'm making them quite narrow so that they don't break easily. The tubes I'm going to use are a number 2 and a number 1. Now if you've got a 1.5 is quite good as well. I need boards. Now I need to pipe them onto a board and leave them to dry, so later when they're dry I can peel them off and put them on the cake. So I can use a board or perspex. Usual scissors, palette knife, paintbrush. And then I've got the film that I need to pipe them into. So it's a film that's see-through. So this film here, I'm just cutting it off the bag. As you can see, it's very fine, and once the rye lysine is dry, the lace can be peeled off that. Trouble is, I hope I don't lose it. This is off a film roll, and that is just slightly thicker. Either is fine. The rye lysine. Now this is a piping skills, so it's piped with rye lysine. And I've got some rye lysine here that's freshly made. It's also got no glycerine in, because as you know, glycerine makes the rye lysine soft, so it wouldn't be dry. So if I put glycerine in it and I tried to transfer the lace onto the cake, it would crumble. So no glycerine in the rye lysine, so it'd be nice and firm and it'll dry hard. Piping consistency, a good consistency. Okay, so I've got a piping bag. I'm going to insert a number 2 tube. Small bag, so it's a small tube, small bag, small amount of rye lysine. If you overfill your bag with rye lysine, you'll have problems piping it, you'll have problems holding it and controlling it. So as you can see, it's a very small bag. I can handle that so much better. And I also need a number 1. There we go. I've got a cloth, 1 cloth to place on top of my rye lysine, stop it drying out. And another one so that I can put the piping tubes, the tip of the piping tubes in underneath, and that will stop them drying out as well. Okay, so just move those up a bit. So I've got some patterns here, and as you can see, I've got a selection of designs. So I'm going to choose a design that I'd like to use. Now if you look at these designs, some will be more fragile than others. So this one works really well because there's quite a lot of lines quite close together. This one would work well. But when you come to this design here, the hearts, you'll find with that one that it's very fragile, and you'd have to pipe a lot of lace to get that design to come out well. But what you can do is improve the design. So it's a good example. I've got a pencil here, and I could change the design slightly by putting a few extra lines in it, and those lines will make it more supportive, so it'll break less. So the more lines you put in, the less the lace will, has a chance of breaking. I can add more to it. I could add an extra line here, and again, by adding more lines to it, the structure will be a lot sound. So I could change all my designs by adding extra lines. So I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to cut a strip, and I'm going to make sure it fits on my board. If it doesn't, I just need to cut it off. What I do need to do is make sure it fits the board, that it's not hanging over the board, because if I hang it over and I'm piping and I touch that, you'll find that all of these will shatter and they'll all break, so you won't be able to transfer them. I then need a piece of film that fits over the top of that. So I'll use my number 2 tube to secure it all in place. So I'm just going to pipe a few dots to hold it together. And then a few dots under the film. Now don't be tempted to stick this down with tape, because if you do, when you come to take it off, when you peel the tape off, your lace will break. There's more chance of it breaking. So you can see there that I've got, you can see the shine of the film and my pattern underneath. Okay, nothing is hanging over the edge of the board. If it is, I can just move it, because again, if the film's hanging over the edge of the board and I just catch that, it will break them all, so I won't be able to get them onto the cake. So now it's a small piece of lace, and I'm going to pipe with a number 1 tube. So the usual piping skills apply. I think I'll turn it round that way actually. So I'm going to pipe a straight line. You can see I'm holding the bag and I'm resting it on my finger. And because this is really fine work, I'm actually leaning on my hand on something, on my finger, so that I can make sure I don't shake. And when I'm piping, I'm anchoring, lifting. I'm going to do that one again. There we go. And come down. No, my tube's not behaving very well. So I'm just going to fill another bag. But that's how you pipe. With a number 1 tube, it's very easy to damage them. So never push anything down like a cocktail stick or a wire. Just make sure you clean it out well with a paintbrush. Try this one, see if this is any better. And I'm keeping this in the video because I want you to realise that, you know, this can happen, and it might mean that tube needs washing out, perhaps got a little bit of dry sugar in there. So when I'm piping, I anchor, I lift, that's better, come down, anchor, lift, come down, and you stop at every point. So I'll stop at the point, start and stop. And when you're piping, make sure that where you join it up with another line and finish it with another line, because don't forget that needs to be peeled off when it's dry and placed on a cake. And if it's not attaching to anything, you'll find that it'll just crumble and break apart. Now this is a really nice, relaxing task, but you do need your piping skills, and if you haven't got your piping skills you know, to a good standard, by the time I've piped 150 of these, I think my piping skills would have improved. So always use your brush to clean it up. pipe as you go. And you can get quite quick at piping these, but obviously you need spares. Anything to do with royal icing at breakable, and that's why they look so good. It's because they are a skill. It's not easy. It's not a lot of people can do this, and it's something you learn how to do when you're piping. But you do need to make spares. So you sit and carry on. So I'm just using a number 1 tube there, and you can see that hopefully you can see the pattern. And then when I've finished piping what I want, I'm going to put it under a lamp. Now the reason I'm putting it under a lamp is to stop it, so that it'll dry quicker. So in a couple of hours I'll be able to use these on a cake. Okay, so I'd like to show you now some large lace pieces. Here we go. So I've got patterns here, and I'm going to cut out, what's this one? So don't be tempted to leave it on the sheet unless you've got a really big board, and then you'll be leaving over it. You do make these small. Now I could work on here. That's no problem. I could put the film on top. Or with Perspex, I might be able to see it through. So I've got the pattern underneath and the Perspex, the film on top. Now the only problem with this, because the thickness of the Perspex, it does disform the pattern a little bit. So I'd always be tempted to put it on top. So I'll just work on the board. So again, I'm going to use number 2 tube, just stick it down. And there you go. Checking nothing's hanging out of the edge. If it is, just cut it off, because we don't have a problem of them all breaking. So there, I can work on it. Now, if a lace piece is quite big, what I could do is do a mixture. I could do a mixture of a number 2 tube, a number 1, and perhaps a 1.5, and just to give it a little bit more firmness to it, so I'd break less of them. So I wish I could tilt this a little bit for you to see, but it's difficult. I wonder if I could do that. So I've got number 2 tube here. So I'm going to pipe the main sections with the number 2 tube. Just I'm piping the body. Always use your brush to neaten it off. Perhaps a few more lines here and there. So hopefully you understand that number 2 tube will give it a little bit more of a structure to it. I'm making sure that everything's flattened down. If it's sticking up, I'll just flatten it down and don't have anything overlapping. I think I'll just pipe these. When I come to finish this, I just need to tuck it in somewhere. Okay, so you can see I've piped just a few outlines, and that can be piped in number 2 or a 1.5. If you want it really fine, a number 1. Now I'm going to use a number 1 tube, and I'm going to put some more detail in. But first of all, I'm over piping those number 2. Now the reason I'm over piping it is so that it looks neater, it looks finer. A number 2 by itself would look quite heavy, but by over piping it. So over piping means putting another layer on top of it. It would make it a little bit more detail, a little bit finer, so the work would look nicer. You can see how I'm lifting the tube as I'm piping. And again, neaten off, push anything where you want it to be. And you can see any of these lines, although I'm over piping it, I'm not overlapping another line. So I'll try and explain that a little bit better in a second. Okay, so I've just over piped those number 2. So you can see it looks a lot neater, a lot better. But if I left it like this, it would be far too fragile. I would have difficulty transferring that onto a cake. So I'm going to put a lot more detail in there. So I'm going to put some more number 1s. So it does take quite a bit of time to do this. You can see I'm piping some more lines. What I mean about overlapping is when I come here, these lines are overlapping each other. I can pipe one, so I'll pipe that one. But when it comes to piping this one here, what I wouldn't do is pipe here and go over the top of that one. I would stop next to it and then start again. So I pipe and stop, start again and stop, and then start again and stop. If you overlap the lines, it doesn't look very neat. All the lines will be up and down. I don't know whether you can see that. Hopefully you can. So it just takes a little while. By adding my detail in, I'll carry on piping and I'll try and fast forward this. People think that this sort of work doesn't transport very well, but it does. You'd be surprising if nobody touches it, it does transport. The problem and the risk you have is people tend to touch it. They go, "Ooh, this looks nice," and just touch it, and as soon as somebody touches it, it will break. You can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to get the lines touching each other, so they're all starting to touch each other. And you can just nudge it, put it in the place you want to with your brush. What you can do is add something else to it. Oops. I'm going to pipe a few dots, and these dots, as long as they're touching each other and touching the lines, will make it a little bit more secure. See those dots? Okay, so I'm going to carry on piping, and then I'm going to show you, once they're dry, I'm going to show you to transfer them onto the cake. Thank you. Right, so I'd like to show you how to transfer the lace onto the board or the cake. So my lace has dried, so it's stuck down the little bit of royal icing, so I've loosened that. I'm then taking the lace on the film still to the edge of the board. I'm then peeling it, so bending the piece of film, and as it peels off, it will or should go onto my hand. Right then, pipe a line where I want the lace to be. And that royal icing is the same colour as the lace, so it shouldn't be seen. And place it on. Now that royal icing could be the same colour as the board or the cake. Take your brush, take off any royal icing that you can see, and just position them where you want them to be. Now, it's always better if this lace is tilting. So if it was on the side of a cake, it would be tilting down, so that you can see it. What you wouldn't want is that lace to stand straight up, because then you wouldn't be able to see it. It's nice if it's tilting down so you can see. Into my hand. Nice and gently, because it is fragile, it is very fragile. But once it's in position, it doesn't break. People think, oh, the lace is really fragile, I won't be able to transport the cake. Well, you will be able to. It shouldn't break. The only thing that when it breaks is when people touch it, and it is one of those things people do like to say, oh, is that real, and touch it. But you can see there that the lace is standing up, and it can be seen. So it's not a difficult skill to do. Right, but I need to transfer now the large pieces of lace. So all I've got here is a little plaque. So I'm going to display mine on the plaque, sticking that down with royal icing. I've got a number, number 3 or number 2, and I'm just going to pipe a ball, because where I want this lace to be, I don't want it flat. If I put it flat, then I might as well have just piped a pattern onto the board. I do want it to stand up. So then exactly the same. I'm going to try and position both so you can see them. Just need to take a big breath when you're doing this. Loosen any little dots of royal icing that you've held the film down with. And then that should be loose, but still on the film. You take it to the edge. So I'm using it on the table so it doesn't block my hand. And I'm going to peel it off. And as I peel it off, I'm going to catch it with my hand. And then nice and gently, I've got it with my hand. Again, the more handling you do with this, the more chance of breaking it. So get the royal icing ready and then just gently place it on. So I want my lace to be a little bit floating, just to show it off a little bit more. So there we go. If I wanted this up, I just need to perhaps support it a little bit until the royal icing is dry. There's your lace. Thank you.